They come from cities and towns across the country. Men and women trained especially for rescuing victims in urban environments. Cities traumatized by disaster, hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, and acts of terrorism. These elite task forces are urban search and rescue teams, called USAR. They are one way the federal government works to save lives when our cities are in crisis. In this episode of Investigative Reports, the unique bravery and heroism of urban search and rescue. They say that every disaster is local. National urban disasters like the attacks of September 11th are initially handled by local police and firefighters, who are our front line of defense. But the unique demands of a crisis in a metropolitan area require the aid and expertise of the urban search and rescue teams. Part of FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, these urban search and rescue teams are highly specialized, elite task forces who focus on pulling victims out of the rubble. In this episode of Investigative Reports, we meet the men and women who risk their lives in order to save lives in our nation's cities. New York lost much more than buildings and people in the terror attacks of September 11th. Gone in the collapse of the World Trade Center were hundreds of local firefighters. Even the city's elite emergency response unit, Rescue 1. Firefighters and rescue personnel from around the world would eventually make their way to help their brothers in New York City. After the Oklahoma City bombing, the newly formed urban search and rescue teams realized they were up against a new enemy. Disaster City was established in 1998 as a direct response to the nation's fight against domestic terrorism. Investigative Reports traveled to Texas to see what some are calling the proving grounds for our nation's urban search and rescue teams. Local emergency first responders and USAR team members train here in preparation for the next mission. Disaster City is part of a 120-acre emergency response and rescue training field. It's part of the University of Texas in College Station. Tim Gallagher is the team leader of Texas Task Force 1. Today he's training and working with members of his own task force. Tim is a longtime firefighter, a veteran of Oklahoma City, and now the World Trade Center, so his team listens carefully.
What we have here is a rubble pile. This is very similar to the situation we found in Oklahoma City out in front of the building. You saw the floors collapse into one big rubble pile of concrete. And that's exactly what we have here.
In New York City, huge pieces of steel presented very different obstacles. But the problem remains. A man-made structure has been brought violently to the ground. There are victims trapped inside, people who need to be rescued. That's what the team prepares for at Disaster City. Before the exercise begins, team members put a live victim down into a void in the pile.
We send a recon team out that consists of several members, canine search component, technical search component, structural engineer, and a few other folks. First thing we would do would be to send up our canines. The canine is trained to find the strongest scent. Once they find that scent, they will alert. They'll bark. They'll bark several times. And that notifies the handler that we have a victim. Based on the training of the dog, the signal the canine gives may indicate a live victim or a deceased victim.
Once the canine team interprets the alert, they will then want to verify the bark with their technical search equipment.
The search cam is a fiber optic device that we can stick down into the cracks, crevices. That head articulates around and the view comes up on the monitor itself. And that way the technical search specialist can see whether or not there's actually a victim there.
You in the hole? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
How are you?
I feel fine. Just need to get out of here.
All right, you heard anywhere?
No, I feel fine.
No interest, you just stuck. All right, we'll get a team out here and we'll get you right out.
Thank you.
One of the other things we would like to do is monitor that space with an atmospheric monitor. A couple things we're looking at, the oxygen concentration, if there's any flammable atmospheres in there, if there's any toxic atmospheres.
National and local preparedness requires much different thinking than it did before September 11th. In addition to refining their ability to react to disasters, FEMA and its urban search and rescue teams are focused on being proactive in metropolitan areas where crises might occur, as we saw with their work on the Salt Lake City Olympics. The national spotlight has focused congressional attention, and it appears that the number of USAR teams will be increased. As always, the teams will be at the ready. Their motto, adapt and overcome, serves them well. I'm Bill Curtis. Thanks for watching Investigative Reports here on A&E.